Kia ora, everyone. It's lockdown. It's mouse hunt time. I put up 2 rats the other day and the expert chimed in. Jordan Munn, trapper and trigger, professional hunter, trapper, killer. Oh, can we say that? Yeah, of course we can.
No, not really. Yeah.
There's a purpose behind most of it, though, isn't there, Jordan? In New Zealand, what's the aim?
Yeah, well, we're talking about pests, aren't we here? Rodents and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a funny one because New Zealand's conservation is really focused on our birds for some reason. Our birds are like our iconic species, are kind of what we relate to our native birds. So the biggest threat to our native birds, which is the largest part of our biodiversity, is pests, basically, is predators. And predators is a broad term, but mostly dealing with rats, possums, and mustelids, which are stoats and ferrets and weasels. So it's a pretty obvious equation that less predators equals more birds. Mm-hmm. That's what it's about. Yeah.
And the possums fit into predators or habitat?
Well, possums are known to, at high densities, have quite a considerable impact on birds' eggs during that nesting season. So you'll probably also find that it's hard to get your head around, but our predators, the hardest time for our birds is nesting. That's about it, when they're on the nest and vulnerable, or when the eggs are in the nest. And actually, the biggest problem is not necessarily live birds dying, but eggs dying and fledglings dying before they get out of the nest. So there's a lot of timing involved with predator control if you're trying to get like those long-term impacts by sustained control. Yeah. So targeting the nests is what the possums seem to do a lot of. So it's been documented. I think they're a bit of a double whammy because they have that impact on vegetation as well. And the higher the population, and the higher the impacts they have.
Hard out. So you were saying about fledglings. At a NZDA conference, I think about 4 years ago, they were talking about the pest-proof fence on Cape Kidnappers, and they brought up the fact that Kiwis, if they get over 60 days, they're away laughing. But like you say, as fledglings, they're very, very vulnerable. And they showed a video of an adult Kiwi just beating the crap out of a ferret. I was like, man, those things are badass.
Yeah, and that's another good one to understand, really, is that, our adult Kiwi aren't really that vulnerable. They're a big bird and they can fight for themselves. But it's that 60-day period. It's when Kiwi get to about 1,000 grams or a kilo. Mm-hmm. So nearly all of our predation on Kiwi happens between coming out of the egg and that 1,000 gram period. So, it can happen at any stage, straight out of the egg or at 1,000 grams. Once they hit that point, they can generally fight for themselves. And the problem with Kiwi is that if there's a remnant population, some of them last for 60 years. Mm-hmm. So it can be perceived that there's a strong or a healthy population there because they can hear them at night. But they may be 60 and they may not have actually fledged a Kiwi out of a nest in 10 to 20 years. So it's good to understand that there's a big span between these remnant populations and then what's actually fledging out there, because the fledging rates are extremely low in unprotected areas.
And that's why you're seeing the crews go in and collect eggs, hatch them, raise them, and then take them back. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they basically just rear them to that 1,000 gram mark, and then they can put them straight back where they come from. And they're like, it increases the population. It's pretty enhanced, obviously, taking them out of their natural environment, but it's the best fighting chance. I remember doing deer culling in Turaweta, northern Turaweta, and the Kiwi guy, he was in there all the time, and I was in there, and he couldn't fledge a Kiwi. They had an intensive trapping program, and I think he had like 10 monitored Kiwi, and they always died on him. So, and it was generally due to stoat predation. And another problem with stoats is that it doesn't take a heap of stoats to do the damage. It just takes one smart stoat that can pick up the scent, and it'll go from nest to nest, So even low density stoats can have a big impact on Kiwi fledging, because it takes one stoat to do 10 Kiwi. It just jumps from nest to nest, doesn't have to eat them all, just wants to kill them. Yeah.
You brought up the fact there that stoats are smart, and that's the sort of common slang of calling someone a weasel, is that they're quite crafty and smart, and they figure it out really fast. And we had the guys from Seeker Foundation at the Hastings Deerstalkers before all this sort of happened, and that was what they were sort of getting at. That now they're around about a year on with the A24s. They're thinking about moving them a little bit around the river to try, disrupt the stoats, because they're getting lots of rats, but they're not so sure on, it's hard with those A24s to know what's there without having a camera on it. But to try catch that smart stoat,
that's a learned habit.
Yeah, do you sort of, I don't know, as someone that's interested in getting rid of them, do you sort of pattern them with cameras, or what do you do?
Look, there's a common rule with conservation, and the biggest rule is that it takes a number of tools to achieve eradication or achieve your goals generally. One tool may work for a period of time, but we've got offshore islands where you've got an intense network of stoat boxes, like a really intense network, and what happens is they run in pairs. So if they're running in pairs and the first one goes into a stoat box and dies, the second one observes a lethal encounter, right? And that becomes an educated stoat. So let's just say a quarter of the population running in pairs encountered that problem. That means a quarter of the population becomes educated to traps. And so it's basically if you've got a long network of things like just the same trap, you'll end up creating the educated population. So layering tools, so A24s, different types of traps and different tools that can, eliminate those educated populations by giving them a different option. And it's like you mentioned, if you moved your A24, we found that with the rats, that we'd move them 5 meters and then we end up getting a hit. It's just because it's just that far from its home range, or it's just in a different place where the rat's comfortable. We're not sure.
Interesting. And then obviously the 200 or the tunnel, again, is that just something that's enticing for them, or what's the behaviour characteristic of those animals that makes a tunnel network to get into a trap enticing? It seems ridiculous when you walk past them, eh? What are they doing? Sticking their head in there.
Pretty obvious. I don't know, man. There's been a lot of research around the stuff done. Lincoln University do heaps of it. They try all sorts of different traps and toxins and things to look for alternatives. But once again, I think it's about having a variation. Like one stoat might not be able to resist the look of an egg, and that'll suck it in there. The next stoat might not be able to resist salted rabbit, and so that sucks it in. So with our traps, we try to have a variation of tools, of lures, and rotate them just to kind of mix things up a bit, because it may be that other lure that sucks it in. You have the same lure forever, you're not going to catch the one that likes eggs, eh?
Yeah. You hear with rats, like when it comes to poison, that they'll, I got this off Joe Rogan, so you don't know how real it is, but that the older rats will let the younger rats try it out first, and then also with bait and things, that you got to nail them down, or else older rats will collect them up for a while. How much do you know about that?
Oh, look, there's some weird ideas, but there's too many variables. So what kind of toxin are we talking about? Was it in second generation anticoagulant that accumulates, or are we talking about something like 1080, which has an instant effect once you hit those lethal dosages? I'm not too sure, but like juvenile rats may tend to forage more, have longer home ranges. I don't know where it comes from, but I'd say they'd use similar. So we use broadificum as one of our most widely used poisons. If you can buy broadificum from the supermarket, right? And that's the rat bait you put under your kitchen sink, and that's what they call a second generation anticoagulant. So it accumulates in the rat's system, and it doesn't actually show symptoms until it hits that lethal dosage. So let's just say we're talking pellets. Let's say it takes 5 pellets to kill a rat. It'll come 4 times and eat a pellet each time, and won't actually feel any effects. And so what that does is gives it an opportunity to bring other rats to that toxin, that food source. Yeah, and then it also means that once they hit that lethal dosage, there's no going back, and it eliminates what is, you get this education factor with 1080, it eliminates them having a non-lethal dosage, getting sick and getting better, and being toxin shy from there on.
Right.
So that's what second generation anticoagulants are good for, is that luring factor with other individuals, and then obviously not having the education factor around non-lethal dosages. But the cons to that are that it accumulates in the ecosystem as well. So that's where you can see issues between something else eating it and then something else eating it and something else eating that, and you're still showing traces of that toxin. So it accumulates in the environment, essentially, as opposed to something like 1080, which is designed to dilute to smaller and smaller particles till they're untraceable.
So I guess that answers a little bit of my question. Following up on that, is it quite good to just have a massive pile of it?
Well, I don't know. You've got to make sure that your pile of toxins contained is one thing. You don't want anything and everything eating it. That's why on some of the projects we use things like a bait station, which is kind of designed to filter out a few different types of animals and narrow it down to your targets. So the bait station's designed to apply it to certain things, not cattle or horses.
Yeah. So
look, I'm a firm believer in traps. Like some of these last rats on the peninsula, on Miramar Peninsula that we've been working on, they've all come from $3 traps. We just a sucker for it. You can put a trap anywhere. If you put it in a box and you're not going to harm anything else, and away you go. Yeah.
So do you think trapping peninsulas is a shovel-ready job then? if we come out of this, do you think we should get some boots on the ground with some $3 traps, mate?
A heap of $3 traps, yeah, possibly. Look, it's one. I go back to having that multiple tools. So for our peninsula that we worked on, we had a staggered approach, which was toxins first, which created that 90% knockdown,
right? And
then that sort of means that we're dealing with individuals rather than groups, so we're less likely to educate them with traps, because traps are quite, you have a lot of education factor with traps. So then we trap the rest, basically, detect and trap. So a number of tools is what I always recommend. Might not like all of them, but you might like one of them.
Yeah, that's right. So as hunters, and I did Makino Spur Mohaka River at New Year's, and I think we got 5 stoats and 3 possums. It's a pretty simple way to just go along, turn your head to the side and look in, and if it's usually you smell it before you see it, but go in and reset the thing. Like, give hunters some confidence to get their hands dirty, mate.
Yeah, look, it's a simple task, but you kind of want to be prepared at the same time. I think that you shouldn't have to walk anywhere in Dockland and expect to find a trap that you can service to feel good, But if you've got a local area that you always hunt in, and you know that there's a trap line up the main track, well then get hold of some bait from Doc or from your local council, like a lure. Grab a screwdriver, and it gives you something to do on your way to your hunting zone. Like, it's definitely a good thing that the more often you refresh those traps, put new bait in them, clear anything out of them, then the more likely they're going to have a positive impact on the environment. So it's not a hard task to do, and if it's voluntary, you don't have, if you're busy, you don't have to do it. The trap's empty, or if you don't have time, just walk past it. But definitely a good thing, a good habit to get into, because hunters, like, we say we're conservationists, that we feel like we're conservationists, but we need to be able to prove that as well in the way we get around, by doing stupid things. Don't leave rubbish in the bush, and look after our huts. Service some traps. It's a good way to actually support that profile that hunters are conservationists as well.
And I saw lots of people gave the video shit, but Khan Adam being on a doc video contributing to that. What were you pretty proud of that as a hunter and a trapper? Were you like, yeah, that's right?
Yeah, look, I think Khan's he's a good advocate, because he's out there. He's got 30 guys in the field dealing to pests full time. So he walks the walk, and he's a well-proven hunter. You can see by his history that he can get out there and do things properly, He doesn't cheat. He goes, he does the hard yards, and he uses his bow. So he's a good example. He's a good advocate for that. And I was kind of like, cool. It's good to see Doc actually reaching out to get that hunting perspective as well, because, like, there's a little bit of friction there at times. So to have someone representing the hunting community is good, and somebody that can support that pest control as well.
Yeah. So, like, from your perspective, what is a mind frame that we can take? I've sort of started to adapt this ecology type thing that,
Yeah.
look out for what should be there, and understand that that's the feed of deer, and try and do your best to help foster that ecology, because one, it means that you're going to have good animals, and two, we're going to have good forest and good birds, and it should all be a unit. What do you sort of what do you sort of think?
It sounds simple, doesn't it? But look,
Yeah.
we've got some serious issues when it comes to game animals, which are also listed as pest animals. They can be looked at both ways, and people don't like deer being called a pest, and because the hunters and then conservationists don't like them being called a resource because they don't see them as a resource. So I have a flexible mindset. They can be a pest when they are, and they can be a resource when they're available. But we got some high numbers of deer in parts of New Zealand's forest doing some serious damage. And then we got some amazing open country where there should be deer and there's none because it gets hammered too much. And so we've got a really big contrast there, and it's about understanding, where is the happy medium. And one thing I think of is deer will increase at a rate of about 35% annually. So 35% increase a year. So if you've got a herd of 100 deer, and in general conditions, they should have another 35 deer the next year. And so what that means is that if you're seeing large groups of deer or lots of deer in a small space of time, that you technically, if you class them as high abundance, you need to be able to remove 35% of them to maintain it at that level. So that's the mindset that I approach. If I go out there and I see stuff all deer, I'm like, well, cool, there's room to breathe here. And if I see heaps of deer, I think, shit, like, you really have to take 35% of these deer out to maintain them at acceptable levels. And that's where things like dock step in. So I guess it's about being able to measure what you're looking at and making those judgments yourself. But everyone's guilty of it. Like, I go hunting and then I'm like, man, there's so many deer, but I just want to shoot a stag. And that has no impact on the population. And I'm going against my own values, which is to be a conservationist as well and maintain deer herds. So I don't know, it's highly conflicting. I think that we've just got to be flexible. We've got to have a flexible mindset based on different scenarios. Waro, why would we oppose Waro in an area that has hyper abundant populations, shit heads and shit conditioned deer, when that could actually improve that herd for us? And then why are we allowing Waro in places where there's so low density deer that it's almost not worth recreational hunting, So it's about having those balances and being able to understand them.
Yeah, going back to Ken Speedy, he's also saying about bush that's hammered. So not only do you have low crap quality numbers of deer, but you've also got a crap bush. So that's a double problem. It's not good hunting, and it's an empty, dying forest. So again, knowing what to look for. And you mentioned there, taking the stag does nothing for the management. Elaborate a little bit more on that for people that haven't heard this concept, because I'm lucky that I've heard Cam speak 3 times now, and it's starting to hit home.
It's quite simple. It's quite simple because it's like farming. You only need, need one bull, one ram to service a large paddock. So in the wild, the stags are the same. It only takes one stag to service, say, 100 hinds. So even with stags at really low numbers, the population is still going to grow at the same rate. So shooting stags does nothing. Shooting stags has some benefits, like you don't have that damage from antlers to trees. But when we're talking about managing populations, it's all about shooting the female population to manage it. It's the best way to do it, because super low populations of males are still going to increase. They're still going to work. They're still going to work over 100 hinds. So, and the problem is that most recreational hunters prefer to take a stag, to take a trophy, to take some antler or whatever it is that they want to take home. And it's a mindset that we've got, which is good. Sometimes that's why we go out there. But understanding that if you see 30 deer and you shoot 3 stags, you haven't actually made a difference to that population increasing even further.
The other thing that Cam sort of highlighted was that, like you say, it only takes one stag to service a large amount of hinds, and also the stags tend to encompass a larger area, whereas those family groups of hinds will sort of have a smaller range, and so not only is there a high density of them, but they're going through the same area, and destroying, or depends how many there are, of course, but disrupting the ecology of that area.
Yeah.
Makes your job easier.
Oh, it's to some degrees, yeah. But deer home ranges are funny, aren't they? The thing is, what I've learned through doing deer management is that the home range won't change even with pressure, but the home range between individuals varies. So some stags may have 3,000 hectares, some stags may only have 500 hectares, but females may all be under 300 hectares. But that home range will be established, but it won't change over time once they're about 2 years old. And when we chase deer for work to try and eliminate the last deer, it's like they hit a fence, but they literally hit the end of their home range, turn around and come back, and they'll only, do what they want to do, try and evade people inside their home range. Yeah, so it's quite an interesting concept. Like I said, some home ranges will extend based off the individual, but they basically form it in the first couple of years of their life, and that's it. They know it, they feel safe in it, and they'll just do what they do inside it. That's why if you see a stag, you'll generally see it again over a period of time, because it's kind of sticking within that home range. It doesn't disappear to the opposite end of the mountain range.
And so from sort of getting contracts for you guys, does that sort of go through DOC, go through areas, go through ranges, like, with Te Uruwera, it goes through the iwi, like, how is it a one big expanding model, or it depends who you're working for?
Yeah, look, it depends who you're working for. It's a weird system, to be honest, and we pick up work in so many different ways. The biggest form of picking up contracts is through tendering, online tendering. It's available to the public, so probably half of the work we do we tendered for, which means that an expression of interest comes out to public contractors, whoever's registered. They have some guidelines, and you submit your plan, your approach, your expertise, and a hope of stuff behind it. And that gets scored against other contractors, and then they'll award it to the best contractor based off non-price attributes first, so things like health and safety, track record, and generally they'll evaluate money last, and then they'll score it and hand it out to a contractor. So that's about half of our work. But it also, if it's 10,000 for most agencies, they don't have to tender it. So you can get some contracts under that threshold where they can actually just give it to you because you're a preferred contractor based off your history. It comes in different ways, but we actually do most of our work for regional councils, and then a fair bit for DOC, but we also work for people like Osprey, forestry managers, and a number of different agencies out there, some iwi.
And so after you've done the job, what's the recording like? And like you said, Lincoln's done a lot of work with figuring out what's the best way to kill the small things. Is there many people looking at kill rates, populations, like we just talked about their home ranges, all that sort of stuff, or is it just good job, move on?
Yeah, look, it varies between sites, but there's certain types of measurement. Sometimes we'll get valued, our service will be valued based off the regeneration that they're observing, or just basic observations. Sometimes it's just a target of hours, number of hours that they want us to hit. For Osprey with pigs, it might be a head per hectare rate, or it could be a coverage rate. Look, there's so many variables out there, but we basically, whatever the contract says, we aim to achieve, and then we'll write a post-analysis report after that, showing our observations, what we thought was positive aspects of the operation, what we could have done better, and we submit that to the client as basically, it's sort of our receipt, basically, of what we've done. Kind of breaks down how we did it, what coverage we obtained, and what we removed in the process. And so they can reflect on that in a year's time when they want to do that project again, or they can just bank it for the next year.
Nice. That's really good. I heard you on Educated Hunter, and you talked about getting into this thing. How accidental was it, and how sort of how much did it just scratch the itch of being a bit of a hunter?
Yeah, look, it's a funny thing for me. Like when I was growing up, I was into all sorts of stuff. I was into motocross and boxing and all sorts of things, and I never really had a direct line that I wanted to chase. But I I, I dropped out of school because I just couldn't sit still for more than 3 hours,
Yeah.
and I joined a contractor down south as an employee, just trapping possums for TB3. And through that, and with what little hunting knowledge I had, I kind of grew a bit of a passion for the outdoors. And I'd see deer while I was possuming and see pigs, and thought, right, I'm into this. I got a gun license, and I tried, and um, it was a large portion of it was self-taught. But then I had this thought. I was like, right, I want to be, when I grow up, I want to be a professional hunter. You know, I knew a few guys, like the Barry Crump. Like, if I could do that for a living, I won. You know, this is cool. So I set my sights. I got a dog, and I put some hard work in, and a contractor gave me an opportunity to do some deer culling. So away I went. Turns out I did an all right job, and I'm out there doing some culling, doing a couple of weeks every few months. And it was, for me, I just wanted to be hunting. I wanted to be a hunter. I wanted to be a professional hunter. That's why I did it. And there was a transition there where I actually realized that what I was doing for this contract and what I was doing for Doc was trying to achieve a goal. And I was observing the bird life around me, and observing the impacts that deer were having on some of our offshore islands where we're trying to create bird sanctuaries for. And I read some books about our first conservationist who was basically living next door to my hut. And I grew a passion there. It transferred. So all of a sudden, I was using my skill and my passion as a hunter to help conservation, help the environment, and it basically just gave my mindset a boost. Really, like, I'm doing this for something now, not because I like it, but because I'm actually achieving something in the process, and I can look back and I can be proud of some of those achievements. So yeah, it was a slow transition, but that's how I got to the point of being, you know, what I would consider myself as part of the hunting community, recreational hunting community. I really enjoy it. I spend a lot of time recreational hunting, but also being out there trying to manage these deer populations sometimes can be conflicting. So I've got a foot on both sides of the fence, and I try to maintain that mutual position where I can understand both sides of the story.
Nice. Can you elaborate further on conservation starting in New Zealand? What is the story? Still there, Jordan?
Hang on, come back to me.
Yeah, you got me now?
Yep.
Good. I was saying, you mentioned reading a book of conservation starting in New Zealand. Can you tell us that story, mate? The cliff notes, anyway.
So, all right, come one more time.
What is the conservation story for New Zealand? How did it start off?
Conservation for New Zealand. Well, what happened was these predators were introduced. So we had things like the rabbit plague, and then we introduced ferrets to try and control them, and stoats showed up, possums showed up, and this is a couple hundred years ago. We were observing them moving through the landscape and actually wiping out a native species during the process. So the government figured out that they had to do something about it, and they wanted to save some of our vulnerable species as these predators were wiping out most of our birds. So they paid this one guy, a guy called Richard Henry, and they basically marooned him in Fiordland, in the most rugged part of New Zealand. And he had a hut and a little bit of support there, and he would translocate birds to these offshore islands where he thought the predators wouldn't get to. So that was his job. He was catching kakapo, things like takahe and kiwi, translocating them to these islands for a safe haven, so that, I'm not sure what the end goal was, that once we could look after New Zealand, we could bring them back. Or at least in the same period, we've seen a lot of animals, a lot of birds go extinct. So yeah, that sparked New Zealand's conservation. He was the first government-paid conservationist to look after a native species, and from there it grew, basically.
Mm-hmm. And so then, for people that don't really understand, what's the difference between having an island environment and then trying to move that model into the mainland or the North Island? What is it just variables, or is it scale?
It's a good problem that we've got at the moment. What it is so we've translocated things like kōkako and mohua and kiwi to these offshore islands. where there are no pests, and their populations have basically exploded to a point where the island's at no use. And so we need to look at new islands, new space for these birds. And what we're doing is we're running out of offshore islands, really. So we're looking at, right now, if we want to put more takahe somewhere, where are we going to put them? Or more kakapo somewhere, where are we going to put them? So we need to start freeing up space on mainland New Zealand. That's the idea, is that end goal is if we had no predators or controlled predators to a stage where all these birds could survive, that'd be great. Like, if you could see kakapo bouncing around at your door, then we're doing well. But it's just a phase we're going through, I suppose. Looking at bigger islands, as you know, the Auckland Islands have been looked at the moment, which is subantarctic. We've done the Antipodes Islands. We've done a lot of the Fiordland Islands. So they're just looking bigger scale. They're looking at things like Stewart Island to control rats and possibly possums. It's just a process of creating more space for our birds that we want to see around.
And so how well do the land ring-fenced islands work? I was in Cambridge for 2.5 years, and Mangatōtiri was right on my doorstep. The thing I noticed was the understory in that place, but how well does a ring-fenced inland sanctuary island work?
They work pretty well. We've got a lot of good proof about it. So Wellington's got a strong conservation-based community, and that stems from one of our first island sanctuaries, a mainland island sanctuaries called Zealandia. You may not have heard of it.
Yeah, I've
in the
heard
back
of it.
Wellington, it's been pest-free for a number of years now, and it holds things like tiaki saddleback, which you won't see in many places in New Zealand. It holds a whole heap of these native species, and it started off as a stronghold for the kaka, and now it's overflowed into Wellington City. So people are observing karearea kaka saddlebacks on their doorsteps, where you'd never have seen them without Zealandia, that mainland island. So what it's done is it created a stronghold, and once people actually observed those benefits, people started actively trapping around it, and councils are trapping around it. So it's an expanding pest reserve now. It goes beyond the fence, but the fence is what started it. And because you can easily eradicate animals out from within the fenced area, we've got the tools to do that. So it's a good way to start. Whereas when you're dealing with constant immigration, it's a never-ending battle and never-ending money drain as well.
Yeah, that was sort of the story I was hearing 4 years ago about the Cape in Hawke's Bay, is that it's a never-ending task of trapping along the fence because there's so much traffic in and out. But then also, if they can expand that trapping system out into the farmland towards the tuk-tuk, then they'll have a better chance of keeping the Cape free of pests. One thing that I've found fascinating, and I lived in Christchurch for 18 months, and I didn't really take much notice, but growing up, and that might have been from living in Auckland before that, but growing up in Invercargill, just out of Invercargill, and even my grandparents' place in Invercargill, there was always tuis and bellbirds and kiridu around. Like there's signs in Otatara where I grew up for, to watch out for the kiridu. But then you get into Christchurch and there's no tuis, but hardly any. Is something like a sanctuary something that Christchurch is in need of? And you sort of fly into Christchurch and you almost wonder if we could get some fingers coming down from the ranges through the farmland and to reach the city. Do you think that would promote that bird life back to Christchurch and the Banks Peninsula?
Yeah, look, definitely, man. I think that there's a few issues here in that scenario. One is that there's probably a lack of habitat supporting those birds in Christchurch City. There may be a lack of native trees, a lack of forest around, which actually you need that to support the population. So that could be one of the issues, as opposed to too many pests. It may be lack of habitat. But I know that they're working on Banks Peninsula at the moment. They're modelling for a possum eradication. There's been ongoing goat control out there for years, and they try to keep the pigs off there. There's a whole heap of new QE2 covenants and forest reserves that they're looking after, and I think there's a few special lizard species and stuff out there. But Banks Peninsula will become a pest-free reserve for Christchurch in the next decade, I think. I'm pretty sure about it. Yeah, they're looking at it. They've already got enough forest here to support some birds and do some reintroduction of some native species, but you'll find there's quite a stronghold of Kiruru and Tui getting around on that peninsula as well now, and they're doing better ever since there's been a lot more attention from Doc and Ecan about it, and now Predator Free will probably join in and they can achieve some cool stuff.
Epic. Yeah, and I know my younger brother, he's a surveyor, so he's looking at a lot of these subdivisions and stuff, and where they've just built in Wigram skies, there's done a lot of work to plant cabbage trees and flaxes, and even they've tried to put natives in the middle of the green belts. So yeah, it'd be cool to go back to that place in 10 years or so and see if those flax bushes can bush up and flower up, and if the tuis are having a feast, that'd be cool.
Yeah. I think that New Zealand in general, we're waking up to planting natives as well. We're becoming more environmentally friendly mindsets and doing things like riparian planting, and like NZTA, they just don't plant non-natives anymore. It's all about habitat restoration where they create new roads or highways, and you'll probably see an increase in that sort of thing. Your subdivisions, I think some of that red zone where they decommissioned all those houses, they're looking at some sort of a restoration project for that. But it's right. We need to be planting natives if we want to support native birds. You look at, you see one flowering kowhai tree and there's always tui hanging out of it. Same with flax bushes. So you can't have none of these bushes on your land and then expect to see native birds hanging out of them. The way to go is have that mindset.
And even where I was in Havelock, we had a wattle, which is non-native, but it was flowering most of the year. And God, we had the one sentinel and maybe its buddy, and then any other one that tried to come in. Man, it was fierce, and it was quite good because it kept the minor birds out as well. Even the sparrows and starlings and thrushes, they got a pounding from these the sentinel tui. This is my bush, people, get out of here. And the other flip side of that is Michael. He's a consultant for forestry. He's been and done a little bit of work with the guys at Lake Hawea, and he's conscious of having the natives that feed our bees, not just our honey producing bees, but our native bees and things. And one of the things he's sort of looking at is having things flower at different times of the year. And I suppose it's the same for the birds, having that food all the way the year round. And that's where you hope that a forest should have a wide diversity of species.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, having if people are looking at a variation in your habitats that it can support them, I see forestries are doing a lot now. They're trying to plant any waterways. In any new established forest, they're trying to leave waterways out and let it regen into native to support native species and also hold together that landscape a bit better. You're dead right. Birds have got to live off something. Lizards have got to live off something all year round, not just during summer, not just during flowering.
Yeah, I think his website's called Trees for Bees or something like that. Yeah, he looks after a lot of the high country stations and things. He's based in Dunedin, so yeah, cool. It's good fun, mate. You've worked on Sentinel Island. What's the story behind it, and what's your contribution been?
Oh, Secretary Island.
Secretary, sorry, yep.
Yeah, the Secretary Island it's about 9,000 hectares, I think it is, 9,000 hectares on the western side of Fiordland, so the coastal side of Fiordland. It's not only is it 9,000 hectares, it's 9,000 hectares of probably our most rugged country. It's steeper than 1-to-1 gradient in many places. Like it's just exploding rock and subalpine scrub and coastal bush. Coastal bush is always thick. So Secretary Island was one of these islands in Fiordland where Doc are looking at trends. Well, they've already got a heap of native birds. I think they've had takahe there, but there's a stronghold of kaka, and they looked at taking kōkako there, but they want to turn this into another pest-free island. And I think at the moment it's only got rats. Sorry, wrong. It's only got stoats and deer on it. So no possums, no rats. So they were trying to eliminate the stoats. They've had this long-term trapping program going for probably 20 odd years now, but the deer were a big target. They wanted the bush to regenerate. It's absolutely no use to hunters out there. Like I'd rather go hunting behind here than out there. And there was about a 10-year program to eradicate the deer off it. So 9,000 hectares. there was a long knockdown period of about 9 years, and then the last couple of years was the eradication phase where they wiped out the last 20 odd.
Mm-hmm.
My contribution wasn't huge, man. I just showed up for the glory at the end, really. I was one of the team hunters, and I had an indicator dog that I'd run and do a little bit of helicopter support. But because there were so few, like I didn't see many of the last year. I chased them around a few times, but it was a cool project. The last year we involved some local Māori from the Whakatane Valley who had really good deer catching dogs. You know how they flush them into the rivers up there to shoot their deer. So we introduced them into the team and took them down there. And the last phase to get rid of the last individuals was to introduce those dogs, put them on the scent, and basically run them into the ground because stalking with indicator dogs had become hopeless over time. The regeneration was so thick over 10 years, and also the remaining population was just so weary to dogs and people that had enough encounters. They'd been bred from deer that had all had encounters with people and hunting dogs, like commercial hunting dogs. So they were really difficult. So we used indicator dogs and the helicopter to bring them down to, less than 10 individuals on the island, and that's when we introduced the chasing dogs to catch them. So I was just support for that, and it was good fun. Yeah, and a good achievement. Like one of our biggest deer eradications using conventional methods like dogs and helicopters.
The hunting dog teams in Victoria might need to listen up. They might have a job, eh? used to chasing those Samba around. They might get a job over here in New Zealand, chasing the last remaining red deer of islands.
Yeah, that's right. Look, they I had a lady Elaine from who's she with? Might be DPI over there looking at Sam. She come over and we did some presentations for her. But yeah, they've got a few big tasks on their hand as well.
In Victoria.
Yeah. Some real big tasks on their hand with some of the deer issues they're having over there is scary.
Yeah, and by all accounts, it's that same conflict between guys wanting to get out there and hunt and do their bit, and taking good numbers to them being locked out of the park because there's control work on. It's one of those. If only we could work together on this, eh?
I'm not a huge supporter of Australian legislation. That's for sure. You know that they're very restricted compared to us in New Zealand. Basically, all of that part of our island sanctuary, our conservation forest is open for hunting. The large majority of it, and over there it's the complete opposite. The national parks is just there's no hunting basically any time, and the forest parks are heavily restricted, and so I feel for them really. They don't have that. They've actually got an excuse for exploding deer populations because recreational hunters haven't got the access they need.
Yeah, I think Victoria, they're all right most of the time, apart from peak season when there's sort of walkers around, from all accounts. But yeah, definitely the dogs, they only have a season when they hound hunt Samba. But yeah, I think in terms of bow and rifle stalking guys, they're allowed to be in there most of the time. But yeah, like you say, there's legislation everywhere, and
it varies between states, and it's just confusing.
But like, you're exactly right. When it comes to New South Wales, it's complete opposite. Everyone's basically got to get onto a property, and then Queensland,
and they're paying for it.
Yeah, and then I think Queensland's different again. Yeah, gosh, it's carnage, mate. Oh, you go. Sorry.
I was going to say they're experiencing some unusual times over there, especially, in fact, right across Australia. They got deer from the eastern side just sweeping through and in high numbers, and their issue is scale. So there's so many deer over so much land that even commercially they're struggling to comprehend how to sort the problems out. Even helicopter shootings almost a drop in the bucket. So it'll be interesting to see where things go. I did some work for DPI in New South Wales, and I observed mobs of like 50, 60 deer out in the open, and the biggest stag will have 6 points, and nobody wants to shoot them anyway. They're just running around like rampant. Guys are trying to farm during these droughts. It's a nightmare. Bloody kangaroos chewing the ground to nothing, and it's not a good look. And I think that over the coming years they'll start experiencing some hyper abundant deer in places they don't want them, and they'll be really looking to sort them out.
Yeah, I was talking to Toby Hines 2 weeks ago, and he was sort of saying in Hunter Valley, farm that he's on, they were shooting sort of 200 under spotlight, and then they got like 400 out of the chopper. And he said he finally, because he can see over 3 farms from where he goes, he said finally I didn't see mobs. And he's saying in terms of the farmer, they're running, what do you say, like 20,000 hectares, and they've got like a couple of hundred deer on there, and he can't run any sheep. It's just like, what are we doing here? The farm can't get any money for these deer. It's just absolute carnage, mate.
It doesn't work if the neighbouring farm does nothing.
Yes.
It's just a battle. So it needs to be a community thing over there for them to be able to see those impacts and get them back to where they want them. I'll let you change subject, or I could talk forever.
No, it's basically on Aussies, the bloody wallabies. You can now spotlight them around Rotorua Lakes. What's happened there? Like, where did they come from? How do we just have these large rats now taking over?
Look, it's a little bit of a balls up, because 10 years ago we probably could have contained them where they were quite happily. And we've really missed the boat. They've jumped some big containment areas. Like they've jumped across a few bridges and places, and gone a bit far to a point that now they're going to be really hard to contain. And yeah, like they're kind of a cool animal when you see them, but when you see them at high densities, like they're scary. They're actually scary. They're nice to shoot with their own individuals, but when you see mobs of like 20 of them cruising through paddocks and stuff, and hammering the bush, hammering the farms, hammering the forestries. It's not going to be a good look when we've got and getting that. So, main species, one Dharma, and one's the redneck, which is a lot bigger.
What was the first one? I heard the redneck one, which I was like, yeah, Australians, classic. What was the first?
They're all Australian rednecks. No, the Dharma wallaby is the North Island species around Rotorua, and they're quite small. They're not much bigger than a possum.
I went into Lake Okatana a couple of years ago, and I saw one run across the track there, and I thought it was a possum, and then looked at the tail. I was like, oh, hang on, it's a wallaby. Yeah.
So they're sneaky little bastards, man. Like, you really can't comprehend until you walk around with some thermal imaging and you can see them without putting a torch on them. You're like, wow, there's a lot of these here. And they're mostly nocturnal. They're really skitterish, so they'll jump and hide at the sound of a twig crack if you give them too much pressure. So they can be really hard to control. And then the South Island ones, the rednecks, they're about 20 kilos, 25 kilos is what a big male eats. So they're big animals, and 3 of them will eat the same as a high country sheep. So when you got these farmers that are dealing with a few thousand, wallabies, that's a few stock units they can be farming as well. And it makes it hard for them to balance their farm, to let some paddocks, regenerate, and then they lock them up, but the wallabies just hammer them. Yeah. And the scary thing is that there's potential for them to be widespread throughout both islands, north and south, right the way through. And they'll be like a possum, Like, do we really want to be going, there's another wallaby everywhere you drive, just like we see possums these days? Not really.
Yeah, my dad has noticed it because he goes Christchurch to Twizel, shit, 5 or 6 times a year for rowing, and he saw it. Did one on the road on the Burks Pass road. And he's like, that's weird. That's the first time he's ever noticed that. So, like you say, they're getting quite far in there now, eh?
Yeah, a few 100,000 hectares I think they have in the South Island. It's going to be a strange time when you see them kicking around the high country. They'll be competing with our chamois, they'll be competing with our tar, competing with deer. It's just going to add to the pressure on both our game species and on our native species, really.
Yeah.
And like I said, if we had a few million injected to contain them 10 years ago, they'd probably still be confined. But now they're at a point where they're going to be hard to stop. Unnatural dispersal is one of them. So where you have a forestry block which is harvested and unnaturally dispersed one that'll run up the road for 3K. So we must be getting a little bit of that. It's quite likely that there's been a few translocated by people, whether they're hunters or just people that have had them as pets. they found a joey that they've run one over, they've kept it, and then they don't understand and they let it go somewhere that they're not actually established. So we're getting a little bit of that happening as well. But I'd say most of our issues through natural dispersal, just increasing populations, and it's that front where they're getting forced forward, walking, jumping bridges and ending up in the odd river and whatnot.
Yeah, obviously using the road to get over the bridge.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That's interesting what you're saying about when the forest gets cleared, how that influences dispersal. Is that sort of like I know my uncle, when he was managing Whitford, they had a full-time hunter in there. Is that one of the things that really needs to be focused on before a forest is harvested? That animals in there are cleared out.
Oh, yeah, look, it's a tricky one. Are you talking about native animals or anything?
Obviously, the pest ones, pigs and deer and possums. Even I suppose they're all in there, aren't they?
I was using that as an example of a natural dispersal. So another form could be a dog flushing one out of a bush and chasing it for a long way, and forcing it into a place where it's never been, or to swim across a river or something weird. But no, it's something that should be looked at, the forestries. I think that it would happen with a few different species as well as just wallabies, but you've really got to look at the values around it. So if there's wallabies here and we harvest this forest, where are they going to go? Is it somewhere that it's wallaby free, or does it not matter? Are they just going to go into the surrounding forest? Same with deer and whatnot. Maybe if there's protected areas or areas of special interest that they shouldn't be going to, maybe it would be something we could look at. I'd think so, yeah.
Yeah, one of my patients manages a native block north of Napier, and that's what he was saying about the pig population. He said the moment that guys get the dogs onto them, they just run straight into the forestry. They're also quite crafty and have learnt that, hey, the dogs don't come in here.
Yeah.
So he just shoots them at range now. He said, it's pretty buzzy. What's your, not to give it away, but in terms of clearing out pigs, what's your sort of biggest bugbear with them? Like what do they get? How do they get the better of you?
Oh, look, pigs are. I love my pig hunting. Like if I pick up a pig hunting job, I'm pumped, because I love running the dogs and getting the results. They're challenging. The biggest issue with pigs is
indicators.
And we find educated pigs anywhere with a high public access.
Yeah.
So if it's an open forestry or conservation land close, with pigs in it, close to civilization, they get hammered. You're dealing with probably a lower population, but really smart pigs, and they can be pretty hard. Which just means they can outsmart the dogs at times, whether it's where they go and where they hide or their tactics. We get them swimming in lakes and jumping rivers and running up roads and all sorts of random things. If they cotton onto a few tricks, they'll keep them forever, and you're just trying to catch a smart pig. But I love it. Yeah, every bit of it.
Yeah, no, it's something I've never done. Well, I've barely done hunting, but yeah, pig hunting, it just always looks, physically involved, and excitement levels go from 0 to 100 real quick.
Yeah, it's a cool sport we have, really, and we're going to have to do some work to look after it. The reason I enjoy it is it's very social. It's a lot more social than deer hunting, because your dogs do the work. You can talk to people as you're hunting. You can have conversations and walk around like nothing's not like you're not even hunting, and that can be good fun. Taking younger people out. The second aspect is the dogs, which everyone loves dogs. Like to see a dog go and do a job, they love it. And see how excited they are. That adds another element. So pig hunting is good fun. We can walk up tracks and let the dogs go do the work. And we only have to go in the bush when they've caught a pig, and that's when you can take young people along, and or even girls. My wife, she doesn't mind every now and then. I take her, and then as soon as you catch something in the blackberry, it's a bad sign. But pig hunting is quite a social thing, and I said we need to look after it because animal welfare regulations are getting tighter. You've got these strong groups that are standing up against animal rights, and so if we're not smart and we post stupid things on Facebook, or we influence dogs that are actually holding pigs for too long or enticing them, that could over time ruin the sport of pig hunting. And even a good holder shouldn't actually really hurt the pig too much. It should just clean hold on the ear and just anchor it there until you get there. It's not trying to rip its head off or kill it. So we need to be smart about how we train our dogs and what we expose to the public, because our intentions are not to hurt the pig or not to torment it. And if that becomes like a key trait of pig hunting, then it could get shut down at the time. And that's where things like bailing dogs are a good way to turn to it, if you're worried about that, or just being hard on your dogs when they're not doing the right thing, making sure that they don't get into habits of chasing on targets or worrying stock or ripping ears off pigs. They don't need to. They just need to hold it till you get there.
Yeah,
the will doesn't have to see it.
Yeah, I guess that's where the ego can come in. You just need to look at the likes of American pit bulls or things like that. These big, muscly, broody things just for the sake of it. Whereas actually, I don't know bugger all about pig dogs, but what little I've been exposed to, seeing those Lockley dogs, a black lab cross through over a greyhound every third time. It's a great looking dog.
Yeah.
And you've made your own team of pig dogs. How do you sort of balance them with your indicating dogs? They've obviously got different purposes.
Yeah, look, the it's funny how I balance it. The pig dogs require a lot more maintenance, because they need to be fit to keep up with pigs or to catch pigs. There's always a younger dog that needs to see more pigs as well. There's always this driving pressure to get the next dog some action. Mm-hmm. Whereas my indicator, I could pull her out of the kennel after a month without work, and she'll work bang on. I could pull her out 6 months after going in the bush. I can guarantee you she'll point a deer like she always has. She doesn't require that fitness maintenance, maybe just a little bit around the commands, make sure that they're still responsive. But the pig dogs require a lot more. So most of my recreational hunting that I do, because I'll do 2 or 3 walks a week outside of work, and that's mostly with the pig dogs, just to keep them up and running. If I've been working the pig dogs all week, then I might go for a deer hunt. But generally, I'm like, right, who wants to come pig hunting this afternoon? I'll ring a few mates and scream up the road and go for a quick walk. Good fun. Nice. And keep them sharp.
So on that, I saw a video of Liam Squire with one of his shoulder mount trophies, poking it out the window, giving his dogs a little hiss. What are you doing for the next potentially month, maybe longer, to keep those pig dogs in shape?
Yeah. Oh, look, this is a big rabbit hole I don't want to get into. Yeah, look, I can still run my dogs. So we're actually about 300 meters away from a forest park in the Rimatuckers, basically.
Yeah.
Just a few hundred meters up the road, so I can get access to them from home without getting in a vehicle. There's pigs everywhere out there, so I have to be careful. But we're still walking as I can. And after I zoom around on the e-bike and make the dogs chase me.
Yeah.
It isn't worry. Look, the rules around the lockdown, I feel like they haven't been constructed very well when it comes to outdoor activities. I think there's been a few big holes missed as to how we've landed where we are. And I've got to be careful about what I say, because we are trying to beat this virus, and we need to do everything we can during the process. But I feel like there's been a bit of tunnel vision on the virus, and people's welfare and people's scenarios haven't been taken into account when they've created these basically blanket bans on any outdoor activities. There's a lot of crazy people stuck inside at the moment. I could imagine it. There's guys like me. I've got to hit the hill in potentially 4 weeks' time with these working dogs, and I can't walk all 5 of them up the road, at once. Like, I really need to be able to just drive to a forest spot and go for a run. And if they catch a pig, then I'm potentially breaking the rules. Or if I drive too far, I'm breaking the rules. It's really difficult to stay within these rules at the moment. And there's people that are in scenarios where they could just fish off their deck at home, and it's no risk to anybody. Yet it's a blanket rule. And so I understand that you let somebody do something and it opened the floodgate, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's a difficult thing for a lot of people to follow in different circumstances, that longer period.
Yeah, even for us here on the farm, we had 4 hinds run around last night, and there's rabbits and hares, and then there's the river that comes through the property, and it's kind of like obviously Fish and Game have shut down the season, so even if you did have a license, it wouldn't be valid right now. But when it comes to pest management on your farm, which is your responsibility, what's the deal? And if Fish and Game then decide in May that, hey, there's no duck shooting season, well, what are these guys on farm supposed to do that are already getting hammered about E. coli levels, and they've got these storage ponds covered in ducks or cropping paddocks covered in ducks? What are they supposed to do? So
right. It's madness, It's madness. And like I mentioned, there hasn't been too much thought put into it. Everyone's got a different scenario. And, my brother-in-law lives on a farm, and he's got a river that runs straight through the middle of it, and he loves fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he can't go, technically by rules, he can't go fishing on his own private farm and catch a fish, like to put on just to cook at night. And there's no risk. There's more risk of him going to check the stock. There's more risk of him going to the supermarket. I think that where I'm going with this, I don't know what would be the alternative to what we've got now, but something, just a set of rules that people could use to follow, because our country is an outdoors country. We love our outdoors. And a set of rules might look something like you cannot travel this far from your home or this far from your vehicle, or you're not allowed out for, you can't do an activity for more than 3 hours or something, or 6 hours, or no overnight stays. Just a set of rules that we can follow that limits our ability to go far and do things which we shouldn't be doing, or spread, increase any risks. But we can still enjoy our outdoors. Like I looked down when I went down to do some groceries, there was people shoulder to shoulder walking up and down the riverbank. Like I'm talking about hundreds of people trying to get exercise, and they're all crammed into this one area because they're not allowed to drive to a forest park and walk their dog or anything like that. They're not allowed to get on their mountain bike and go down the mountain bike trail. And it's kind of, I feel like we're in prison almost.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting time for our liberties, and I sort of, after all this firearm stuff, I've started following David Seymour on Facebook, and that was one of the questions he was posing to the police minister the other day. What are the actual laws that we're going off here? And unfortunately, with sort of a democratic society, you've got to, I don't mean to offend anybody, but appeal to the lowest common denominator, and you can see from the perspective of, hey, right now it's not a good time to have an accident or break your leg or need rescued. And even myself, I was pulling an arrow out of my target the other day and punctured my leg with the knock, and I was like, geez, there's going to be a lot of people out there with good scars at the end of this, because they're not going to want to go to hospital to get stitches. It's just like, it is at that level where you don't want to have an accident, but then you also don't want to be cooped up inside. And that's not me, because I'm on a farm, but I definitely feel for plenty of people out there, right? It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's a matter of striking a balance, We don't want to, New Zealand doesn't want to see, we've got bad enough rates as it is with domestic violence. We don't want to see spikes in that. We don't want to see people actually not going outside for 4 to 5, 6 weeks. It could be bad for them. Bad for mental health people that are suffering from depression. Like, it's just, I feel like it's crazy, the restrictions that we've got given the environment that some people are in, like rivers through farms, deer on your back doorstep. If only we could do things sensibly and get about our ways and look after everybody.
Common sense is not that common, eh?
Yeah, it prevails for a short period of time.
Yes. No, I did hear on the news this morning there's been a homicide, and you just go, oh shit, I hope that's not because of this. It's you don't want it any day of the week, but you just think, man, I hope it wasn't anything to do with this. It's just bloody horrible, mate. You've got a business and staff and running on contracts. How were the calculations? Gosh, did you have a good accountant? What did you do, man?
Look, we've got a good accountant, and I actually haven't talked to him much during this process. But my first concerns were around my staff. How can I look after them? How can I maintain all of my staff through this to the end till we pick up work again? How can I pay them? So, look, I was throwing a few concerns, but as it unravelled and the government come up with that wage subsidy scheme and that the pressures come on.
Yeah.
As a company, we lost a few jobs. We've already lost a few jobs because of timeframes and travel restrictions. I have contacts from Australia. We do work around there, and so I've already lost a few jobs. But I think I've probably picked up a few jobs at the same time, and that's because. So we've lost some jobs for normal reasons, and then other jobs that we have, existing jobs, they've extended the budget because they're going to have more money left over because they can't do anything for this period. So it's kind of balanced itself out for us. I don't have too much concern long term for what we do. I think that there's always going to be money, especially when we're dealing with local governments or regional councils. Maybe there may be a decrease in work from them because they prioritise their funding somewhere else. I'm not too sure. We're doing well. I feel really sorry for the tourism industry, though. They're taking the biggest hit, and that's everything from guided hunters and guiding associations. We're talking about tour buses, helicopter companies that basically run off tourism, towns like Te Anau, Milford, all these things that they're going to take a huge hit. Yeah, West Coast. So I feel for these guys. They're in for a rough ride, and it's hard to see a good outlook the way that things are going. Like opening the doors back to China. When's that going to be? It's a long time away.
Yeah, mate. I was reading deer industry news last night, and it was Farmers Weekly, and one of the guys who's a deer farmer. They said straight away they lost 35% of their income because the hunting season got shut down, and as I said, I was talking to Toby Hines from Australia, and that was prior to the lockdown. He was looking at coming to the Landsborough in June, and he was sort of saying about the hire car, the supermarket, the stuff he buys for his kids, the night he has on the West Coast. He was even saying, last year his mate bought 3 packets of salt in the supermarket, and straight away the person in the supermarket goes, "Oh, you're going hunting." He framed it. It's going to be really fascinating to look at the void that's left by all these people not coming, and it's going to be really hard to look at now because complete tourism's gone. But people really do need to understand that a large segment, like you're saying, Te Anau, Queenstown, Wanaka, West Coast, Twizel, Tikpo, a big number of people, at this period of time, a big amount of those people are hunters, fairly pious. They won't be making so many good pies.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting, and it affects everybody, because tourism overtook our dairy industry. Tourism's our biggest, was or is our biggest earner, and now it's non-existent for the next month or two. So I think everyone should, people that are sitting in their shoes thinking, "Oh, I've still got a job, I'll be fine after this once this lockdown's over." They've got to think about the welfare of the country. We've got to be careful what we do here with our money and how we move forward with job losses and companies going bust. It's going to be interesting.
Absolutely. And even for myself, I was in Auckland 2 weeks prior, so China was already not coming here. There's plenty of people not coming here, and the hire car guy said, we're usually $350 a week, and we're at $150. He said, thank God, people are still travelling within New Zealand, and that's gone. So, what's the hire car people doing right now? It's crazy. Mate, in your young life as a business owner, it's probably not something that you ever even contemplated. But who have you sort of had to mentor you through running a business?
Right. Oh, mentors. To be honest, not too many mentors. I've just made a few mistakes. It's
Nice.
that simple. I've made some big mistakes in my time, especially when I started the company or started contracting as a teenager. And for the first few years I made some mistakes. I've learned from them pretty well. But I just look at what other people are doing and I think about how I could do it better and I make those improvements within our own company. That's my goal. I try to make sure that I can justify every job we do. I don't want to be confronted by recreational hunters saying, "Why are you shooting the deer in this park?" or whatever it is. I want to make sure that I'm doing it for a decent reason, that I'm protecting something. that there's benefits from it, that I'm not just doing it because I can make money out of it. So I know I just try to keep my values true and learn from my mistakes, which is one every year probably, and then and we're doing fine.
Yeah. And so I think, it might just be our generation using social media as a tool to communicate why you're doing stuff. And I'm sure you get people being flippant on there and speaking from their ego, but what's sort of been the response to that? Like, mate, especially that tool of the thermal, seeing how that's used to, efficiently track down pest species, and then what you were sort of trying to introduce with Landsar as well, like something like that. How wicked is it having a tool where you can share, hey, this is not only what this tool's primarily used for, but what it's capable of. What are you sort of getting out of portraying that to everybody through your social media?
Yeah, look, I copped a lot of flack for that, man, and it hurt a lot. When I was just a sole hunter, just contracting and shooting things 10 days in the bush and 3 days out, I made quite a few videos and popped them up of just commercial hunting, and I got, like within a couple of months, I had 14,000 followers on Facebook, and they loved it.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed showing them what is it actually like? What are we doing out here? How do I run the dog? And so for a while, I was hooked into social media, and I thought it was kind of cool educating people around some jobs that I do. And someone knew where we were, I'd tell them where I seen a lot of deer or got a pig sign. I'd give people a heads up. And then I bought the thermal out, and I was excited about it because I've done too much walking already, and way too much walking already, and I'm pretty rare at my ripe age, but I could see the benefits it would have, and what projects we could actually finally achieve, and how much more efficient it would be, and how less walking I'd have to do. And I brought that out there as a solution to some of our problems, and I got hacked on by a few recreational hunters quite heavily. And it really cut me, because I thought I was part of the recreational hunter community. Nice. I loved it. And then all of a sudden, half of them hated me because I had this tool which gave Doc the power to do more projects and kill more deer in certain places. And so, yeah, I had to really learn how to put things forward, and then B, how damaging social media can be if they're not portrayed in the right way.
Yeah.
Scary times. Yeah. But I also learn over time, half of the comments are from people that don't understand or don't want to understand as well. Anyone that's brave enough to ask a question would get a reasonable response, but the people that are just straight insults, there's generally no backing behind them. So I learned that, and it really turned me off putting a lot of our content on social media. Like I limited it so much since then, because I'm afraid of just getting burnt because of misconception or lack of education or understanding, or simply because people don't want to see us doing what we're doing. So
yeah.
It actually had a long-term impact, and so now I think so carefully about anything I post. I post probably a third of what I used to post, just because I'm nervous about what people's reactions might be, which is not where I want to be. I always want to post things, justify what we're doing, and try and educate people at the same time, and keep my head held high about the work we do.
Absolutely, and it was hugely educational watching your stuff, mate. How much has it been used for the Landsar?
Landsar, not too much. I've done a couple of searches. It's something that we don't target that much, and it's also something that doesn't come around that often. There's a whole heap of processes that Landsar go through. It goes, and by the time it gets to police, and then police take over the operation, and they'll exhaust a few of their resources before they call us up. So we're almost a last option for them. So if they can't find somebody with their current tools, they'll call us in, which is crazy, and it frustrates me, but that's just the way it is.
Does it not to be sort of what is the word, like disingenuous or whatever? But will the thermal still work if you're that late down the piece?
You probably got. It depends how cold the environment is, But within a few hours, you would still pick somebody up if they passed away. And then if they're decomposing, we'd also pick them up, because the toxins, and you end up, your body temperature rises again. But look, it would be hard, but it's not the point. The reason you're out is because you're looking for someone that's hopefully alive.
Yeah.
Increases those chances tenfold. Yeah, just hands down. If somebody's not wearing blaze orange, like blaze orange from a helicopter, you can see it from a mile away. If they're not wearing blaze orange, they're standing in the subalpine scrub waving an arm, it'd be pretty hard to see them without thermal imaging, especially when you were dealing with some of our large landscape areas.
Yeah, I've had that experience. Actually, Rohini's, these guys saw me. I was wearing my Hunt Tech mesh top. They saw me from about 400 meters away. And that was with me walking into the bush on the side of the river. They had seen me. So that was bloody good to know. And you're saying subalpine, my mate was wearing full Sika get up subalpine camouflage, and I had a military jacket on and then just black pads, so I was easier to see my figure. But this blaze orange hat beanie on, and they could see me from like 2 k's away. They could not see anything of my mate in subalpine camo, but this orange beanie stuck out like dog's balls. And it's quite good actually, because one of the previous lecturers at optometry came up with that is the most sensitive thing for your eyes. Well, not quite green is, but there's no good in the bush. But and the thing that the deer can't see. So yeah, there's a little bit of optometry history behind that. I went to uni with the daughter of that guy.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of blaze orange, man. Like, I'm wearing it now. I've got 2 blaze oranges on as you're looking at me, but I've had so many experiences in the bush, especially working, even possum trapping, looking for the guy coming towards you. When we're working with blaze orange, I can see a speck through the forest, and it registers straight away as a person wearing blaze orange because I'm tuned into it now. Looking at guys across the hillside when we're working, just knowing exactly where they are, finding them in helicopters, even just picking up hunters on projects that we work on. Mm-hmm. He's somewhere along this hillside or on this coastline. You just look for the orange. It's so simple. And I was roaring in the Hokanuis about 4 years ago, and I heard this roar that I recognized. It wasn't a real stag. I thought that's got to be a person. So I yelled out, and I got a response. And so I yelled out again. We kind of like come together to talk. And I was talking to this guy, and then his mate perched up. I thought it was one man, but his mate perched up behind me, and the main guy had blaze orange. The second guy was wearing camo. I didn't even know he was standing there right next to me. I was just so focused, and I thought that's just a good example. I just don't know why we do all our with reflective strips on it hunting commercially, and I don't find there's a difference. So I'm a big advocate for blaze orange. There's no reason not to wear it, unless maybe if you're bow hunting or something, or poaching. Poaching is a good reason to wear camo.
Let's not endorse that. Jeepers.
No.
It is funny, and you always sort of see excuses. Why not to wear blaze orange? And people always bring up the one that looks like a deer. Well, I've got a summer red right in front of me, and you're right in front of me, and they're completely different. I don't know. I've seen enough to notice. But I think one of the key things you talked about there is that when you're working in a team, you are expecting to see people, and I think that's what as hunters we need to really get into our heads, to expect to see people. It's on the sort of gun safety guidelines. Expect it to be a person, and prove to yourself that it's a deer. But when you're my research subject that I did at uni was around why people miss motorbikes, and it's purely cognitive, and it's not until you sort of put things on a motorcyclist that make them look like a moving person that people start to pick them up. And so people will see pedestrians, but they won't see cyclists or motorcyclists until they create a human figure, and then they see them like nothing else. And it's the same when you're out in the bush. If you expect to see humans, which you should, because it's a public park, then you'll see humans. That'll be your first response.
Yeah, no, there's no excuse really. Like you can wear broken pattern orange so that it breaks the pattern up for the deer, and you may as well be wearing camo. There's no difference. And anyone that shoots somebody wearing blaze orange because it looked the same color as a summer deer, it's not the person wearing orange's fault. Like you meant to identify your target. It's that simple. You shouldn't shoot something based off color. It's the number one rule. Like I've seen way more brown deer than I've seen orange deer, and you find a lot of brown and camo.
Yeah, even the summer seeker, it was more like the rotting contorta, and that's how I picked up the seeker. I saw some rotting contorta. I was like, oh, is that a deer? And then sure enough, right beside it, there was a deer.
Yeah, I'm gonna sucker for fuchsia. You get with the paper mark, big fuchsia like coming out and up, and like you just catch it in your arm, like looking at it, like no way, surely it's not part of a deer.
Yeah, I'm looking for just some better glass, so I stop hunting rocks and fallen trees.
Yeah, it's good to have a decent variable scope. I spend a lot of time on 9 power, like just making sure that I'm looking at a fern or a bit of fuchsia.
Yeah.
Double checking.
Gold. Mate, so as you said, your social media is not quite so prolific these days, but where do people find you? Is there still Facebook? There's definitely Instagram. Is your YouTube will still be there, won't it?
Yeah, look, we're going through some phases at the moment. It's interesting you mentioned it. I for most of my hunting content, I put on Instagram.
Yep.
I try to keep Instagrams a lot more personal. It's a lot less commercially orientated. So just things that we shoot and recreational hunting expeditions and a bit of commercial stuff as well. So Instagram's where it's at. You don't have to deal with people commenting so much on Instagram. We've still got Facebook, but we keep that a lot more commercial now. It's sort of done a transition.
Like more of a business page, is it?
Yeah, it's more of a business page, and it's becoming less photos of, standing behind a big stag and more case studies and projects that we're working on and stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah, and we've also we're sort of rebranding a little bit. We should be launching a new website in a couple of weeks. Quite a nifty website I'll point you towards. And because we're aligning ourselves now with organisations like Next Foundation, Predator Free, and Department of Conservation. We've been working with TVNZ, working with local councils. So we really want to start presenting ourselves aligned with these guys, like a little less grip and grin behind stags and shooting things, and a lot more about focus around our problems and our solutions, and our tools and techniques. So just making it a little bit more, politically sensitive, so that these organisations who are really, high to us as a company, because we don't want to be conflicting really.
And then they're sort of accountable to a lot of people, and a lot of influences going on there behind the scenes, which you can only imagine, and you're probably only thinking about half of it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Mate,
did you catch the Wallaby documentary?
No, tell me about it. I'd love to know.
We did an 18-minute documentary with TVNZ with the Sunday project, program.
Yep.
Sunday on Sunday. So it's a documentary. You'll find it on TVNZ on demand, I'm pretty sure. Okay. And it was a whole section around about New Zealand's wallaby problem, where they're at, where they're going, funding that got declined, and so if you want to look into that, that'd be worth having a look at. Good, it's a good documentary. It's about I think it's about 18 minutes. Awesome. And it was only created about 2 months ago, and it's all about New Zealand's wallaby problem. So have a look.
Yeah, I'll track that down and I'll chuck that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Mate, so it's lockdown, and as I said at the start, we sort of connected over the shipwreck and the Norwegian rat that I had. What would you say is the best advice for getting yourself a trophy rat?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. Feed it heaps first.
This is like the possum for bloody industry, isn't it?
Yeah. No,
pig hunting competitions.
There's a lot of different ways out there, but the Norway rats are a lot bigger. So if you've got Norway rats around, you're right in the zone to get a big sod. But peanut butter is, I reckon, it's a secret. It's not even a secret. It's like, it's the go-to. Why would you use anything other than peanut butter on a snap trap? It's so good. We use it on a lot of our predator control stuff, and it works so well. It always works, hands down, peanut butter. So make sure that you set your trap fine enough that it's going to go off, because some rats are smart and they won't put much pressure on it. They might just nibble really quietly, and put enough peanut butter on there, maybe even a couple of lures around, like just next to your trap or on the outside of your trap if it's in a box, to stop your cat getting it. Chuck a little bit on the outside just to entice the sod in. You're away. Yeah.
So
traps and peanut butter.
So if anyone wants a little bit of a investment advice, don't listen to me. But Pic's peanut butter are going through the roof, and they sort of thought it was because people were in lockdown, but really it's people trying to catch rats.
Yeah. They're good sorts, man. They supplied the Miramar Eradication Project with tons of peanut butter. Awesome. And some of the last rats were caught off peanut butter in a $3 trap. So it's not that hard, man. You just got to be smart about where you put them. Put your trap somewhere where the rats are likely to be or go. If it's a smart rat, they're not going to walk across the middle of your lawn. Put it near a hole or along the back of a fence or under a bit of vegetation.
Yeah, man. Oh well, that'll get the mouse hunt page going with big rats now, I reckon. So thanks so much, Jordan. We've tried to get this done. The internet was still a bit shaky today, but that's to be expected with everybody just tuning into Netflix or YouTube or whatever. But this was bloody awesome. It was so cool to talk conservation and trapping and the other side of being out there in the bush and even being locked up at home in the city. There's plenty of rats in the city, eh?
I've seen enough rats, man. But yeah, look, it's been good to talk. I could talk forever. I love talking about what we do. It's good. And if anyone finds anything slightly educational, then I feel like it was worth the talk. So I'm pleased. Yeah, you're a good yarn. And I'm sure I'll be back at some stage, eh?
Absolutely. Cheers, Jordan. Have a good one. I'll press stop there.